And we're back. Oh, and I was gonna say, Sarah, like right when we get started, like if you just want to like flip it to our introduction slide, like pretty much right away, like that makes so then I don't have to say next slide. Like after Selwyn introduces us, you can just flip it to our intro slide.
And you're seeing the slides right now?
I'm seeing the slides. Looks great.
Great.
My office smells like an Osaka bowl. I should have moved my garbage.
Good afternoon to everyone. We will begin in about less than a minute. I'm Selwyn Rodolfo. I will be your moderator for this evening, for this afternoon, for this session. So welcome everyone to this, our conference, to one of the first presentations for the afternoon. I'm Selwyn Rodolfo, moderator for this session. Before we begin, we have a few reminders. Our code of conduct. We have a code of conduct that we'll adhere to for this conference, and the link is posted in the chat. Hopefully you're seeing it. If you do experience any issues related to conduct, please contact us via email, and that's also posted in the chat. Please be sure your microphone is muted. There will be a question and answer interaction at the end of the presentation. During the question and answer period, do wait until you're invited to unmute before posing your question or comment. This session is being recorded. You can enable captions by clicking on the show captions button at the bottom of the screen. Presenters for this session. The presenters are Sarah Leeman and Amy Hall. Sarah and Amy are both teaching and learning librarians and associate professors at National Louis University in Chicago, Illinois. The title of their presentation is Leveraging Library Expertise to Inform University Approaches to Artificial Intelligence. Please join me in welcoming our presenters. Right ahead.
Thanks for the introduction, Selwyn. We're really happy to be here. So as Selwyn mentioned, my name is Amy Hall. I'm an associate professor and teaching and learning librarian at National Louis University in Chicago, and I'm here with my colleague, Sarah Leeman. And we are really excited to share our presentation today, leveraging library expertise to inform university approaches to AI. So I'm going to pass it off to Sarah to introduce herself and get us started.
Hey everyone, my name is Sarah Leeman and I have the same title as Amy. We both work together at the Chicago campus at NLU. And we're going to talk to you about our approaches to AI at NLU, but first a little bit about our institution. We are primarily based in Illinois in the Chicago area. As you can see, we have 3 different Chicago area campuses. We also have a campus in Tampa, Florida, and we serve a large population of online distance students as well. Our programs are in undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral areas that you can see here, primarily vocationally focused programs. We have an enrollment of approximately 10,000 with about half undergraduate and half graduate. The majority of our students are female, BIPOC, and Pell eligible. We serve a number of non-traditional students, students from traditionally underserved groups. And as you can see, our average age here is also non-traditional. We have a number of returning adult students, and the majority of our students are commuter students or online students. Very few students live on dorms near campus, although we have a few that do. The library is based in Illinois, so at our Chicago and Wheeling campuses, but we serve all students from those areas. And the library reports to the Vice Provost of Faculty Support, which was very relevant to some of the work that we'll talk about as we get into our AI work. We are a relatively small staff. We have 5 staff members, including our director, and 6 faculty librarians. And we wanted to call out some of the work here that the library does. A lot of it will not surprise you: collections, e-resources management, instruction. Our instruction does include credit courses. We offer a couple different credit courses through the library that our instruction librarians, including Amy and myself, teach. And we have a fairly robust course development partnership with our learning design team, where every course that goes through NLU's official course development process has a librarian assigned to the team who can advise in areas related to copyright, selection of course readings, information literacy instruction, and increasingly AI and academic honesty. So that is an existing partnership we have. We also want to note that we are faculty at NLU, so we serve on faculty senate committees, and we participate in university service and thought leadership, as well as other spaces where our faculty are, and that has also enabled some of the work that we do. I'm going to turn it over to Amy to talk about the academic honesty work that we've already been doing here.
Yeah, so before we get into our sort of like specific AI directed work, we just wanted to talk a little bit sort of the library's history with academic integrity. And of course, like all libraries, all librarians do a lot of work in teaching academic integrity, you know, ethical information use, very foundational concepts in information literacy. So what we're focusing on here is sort of our leadership in this topic at the university level. So these are places where we've sort of become known as experts, not just in teaching our own students these ideas, but sort of becoming like trusted voices for helping other faculty think about their own pedagogy in these areas, and also helping, you know, the entire NLU community think about what academic integrity looks like as an institutional value. And so first, I want to talk about, we've been pretty involved with revisions to the university's academic honesty policy. So this policy was revised back in 2019, and then again this year, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, but I want to talk about that first revision back in 2019. And at that time, I was co-chairing the faculty senate committee, which was called the Student Academic Standards Committee, that was in charge of revising this policy. And that was great. That was really exciting because we got to really focus the conversation not just on like the revision of the language in the policy itself, which absolutely was outdated in terms of like the processes and the systems we were using, but we got to really talk about the guidelines for how that policy was going to be implemented. So we got to start a lot of conversations at like individual college meetings about, you know, what does it look like to identify plagiarism? What does it look like to have a conversation with a student who might have plagiarized? How can we really turn those into teaching moments? And then in terms of the policy itself, we really put this new emphasis on a section of the policy that was called definitions and guidelines. And the point of that part of the policy was to really help educate both faculty and students on like, this is what plagiarism looks like. You know, this is how you would avoid it. These are the resources that are available to you, and really sort of like breathing new life into that section that frankly, most people like did not even know that it existed. But that really put the focus on the educational aspects of the policy rather than the punitive aspects of the policy. And that was something that was really important to us, particularly in the library. And so we got to really have that conversation. As Sarah mentioned, we are very involved with the course development process. So there is a librarian assigned to every course that goes through the official course development process with our learning design team. And we do the sort of things that like you would expect librarians to do, which is like help find course materials, consult on like copyright issues. But we also get to be in those conversations and help consult on assignment design and overall course design as it pertains to academic integrity and issues related to information literacy. And this is a workflow that Sarah and I sort of spearheaded several years ago now that is a ton of work. Like, it's a really big load to carry, but it also really regularly puts us in close collaboration with faculty from sort of across the university that are working as SMEs. And it sort of puts us in this position as thought partners for faculty who can then feel comfortable coming back to us in the future for future issues. And so these become these really positive, really productive working relationships outside of that individual course development. And then finally, we also have a pretty long history of collaboration, sort of over multiple iterations of what is now known as the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. This is the body that's really devoted to faculty development. And we have offered a sort of a wide range of programming on information literacy topics, again, with the goal of helping other faculty think about and be more confident in teaching in these areas, knowing that even though we wish it could be the case, a librarian cannot always be there, right? And so what I would call sort of the sort of like centerpiece of this work is a workshop that we call Teaching Academic Honesty, a Collective Responsibility. And at this point, we've sort of done like a few versions of this, and it really focuses on academic integrity as this institutional value that is a responsibility of sort of the entire NLU community. It's not about policy you show to students and then forget about. It's not about some set of punishments that you're going to threaten your students with so they don't plagiarize. In this session, Sarah and I really share a lot of research with faculty about student attitudes towards the research process, their perspectives on plagiarism, and how those voices can inform our community approach to academic integrity. And that idea of collective responsibility, really centering the student voice, collaborating with students about classroom policy is this really foundational concept that we have really taken with us as we've approached our work with AI. And I'm going to pass it back to Sarah to talk a little bit more about that more AI-directed work.
Yeah, so that really brings us to early 2023 when AI became such a mainstream topic in higher education, as I'm sure everyone at this conference knows. And at that time, I remember a conversation that Amy and I had about this, like, what's going on with AI? Where is this going to go? And I remember talking about how, like, well, we could use this as an opportunity to relaunch that whole collective responsibility series. We have an accompanying guide that we had made for that. We said, you know what, let's update that stuff and we'll relaunch it. And that was sort of our first step. But then as those conversations began to snowball, I think we thought a lot more about how this is going to be a big academic integrity issue. And it's also a big information literacy concern. These things are all really related. And we started to talk about how we could position ourselves as experts at the university in this area in a way that really dovetailed with the work that we were already doing. And we wanted to mention here that, we are not AI experts by any means. We are not computer scientists. This was a new area for us as well, but we felt really strongly that was an area that we should be in. And we started to think about how we could make the library be people's first thought when they're struggling with these issues, when they want to learn more. The library is the place that they go. So that really helped launch all of this off. We started pretty small by updating those existing academic honesty guides, by updating our collective responsibility guide, like Amy was saying, to incorporate concerns related to AI and address some of the concerns that both students and faculty might have and how they can start thinking about those issues. A very big part that I have in bold on this slide is these student focus groups, and that's really what came next. As Amy talked about, the student voice is really important in that idea of the collective responsibility. And so to help keep that as a guiding factor, we wanted to hear what students were thinking about AI on campus at that time. So we facilitated these focus groups in June of 2023. To gather the student perspective with an eye on using that student perspective to inform whatever we were going to do next at that point. As I mentioned earlier, the library reports to the Vice Provost for faculty support, and he was very on board with all of this. And at the same time, he convened an AI work group, which was made up of campus-wide stakeholders, and we were invited to join that as well. That group didn't really end up producing very much, but it did give us a chance to connect with people across campus who were all concerned about these issues for various reasons, had various levels of experience, and we were all able to connect and sort of get the word out about the work that we were doing at that point. And because those focus groups were so important to our work, I want to just briefly talk about some of the recommendations that came out of those. So Amy and I facilitated those focus groups, and after reviewing that data, we came to these recommendations. So a really big one was about clarity and consistency in student communications. Even back in June 2023, students were very concerned that they were not getting clear enough guidance at any level. They wanted a statement to come out from the university and at every other level beneath that, like all the way down to their individual course, and within the course at the assignment level, they wanted guidance about whether it was okay to use AI, and if so, how can I use AI? So we made that recommendation. Students were also really concerned that faculty were not prepared enough for everything that AI was bringing. And so we recommended support for faculty in a number of areas that you see here, around communicating with students about plagiarism concerns, understanding how AI tools work, and what faculty actually need to know. Communicating those expectations around AI tools, identifying and addressing AI-generated work, and developing assignments and courses with AI concerns in mind. We recommended that faculty get support in those areas, and then in the coming months, we would end up providing a lot of that support. We also recommended that students receive more foundational information about AI tools and academic honesty at key points in their programs, very intentionally developed curriculum in those areas. So again, we made those recommendations, and we next kind of presented those to anyone who would listen to us about them. And that included academic cabinet, where we were able to present to deans and other administrators about what the students had said and what we recommended. And a lot of things came out after that. We continued to present the focus groups to that AI work group, to different faculty meetings. Again, anyone who would listen to us, we talked to about this. And because the student voice was so important there, and the student concern about not getting enough information, not getting that university statement, the provost's office asked us if we would draft the statement that would go out to all students about AI and academic honesty. So we wrote that. It was very informed by that framework around the collective responsibility that Amy talked about, and that work that we had been doing for a long time. Also, this past year, that Faculty Senate Student Academic Standards Committee that Amy mentioned earlier had a charge to revise the academic honesty policy with AI in mind. And they did invite us to consult on that, so we were able to have some input into the academic honesty policy. And Amy mentioned she had chaired that committee for the previous revision. In the in-between years, I had chaired that committee, so we have a deep history with this particular committee, and this is another place where our faculty role, I think, really helped give us some visibility and allow us to have some input there. Amy already talked about the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. They also report to the same entity that we do. And so this was a really clear and easy collaboration. We were able to facilitate some faculty workshops and presentations with them around things like identifying and addressing AI plagiarism. We hosted a panel where faculty could share their experiences with using AI or prohibiting AI in the classroom, as well as things like setting expectations and citing AI. Some of these we presented along with the CTLE. In some cases, we did this sort of just as the library, but they helped us promote it. So it was a good partnership there. Other campus entities were, of course, also doing things at this time. One of the CTLE's efforts was to offer a course developed by Auburn University, an online course called Teaching with AI. They acquired this course and offered it for program chairs and other relevant stakeholders like learning designers, and asked Amy and I if we would co-facilitate this course. And this was a really great opportunity for us to, again, not just have that visibility and offer that expertise on behalf of the library, but also to interact with program chairs, faculty, and other people across campus. We were able to read and provide feedback on their assignments in that course and really get more of a pulse for what was going on across the university at all different levels. And then lastly, another effort on campus that was happening was with the developmental education department. They were working on a project to look at outcomes for students who had intentional AI instruction in a co-requisite English lab. And they asked us, because of this work we've been doing, they asked us if we would teach a couple of those labs. So we were able to do that, and again, interface even more with students, get more of the student voice, and continue to be part of these conversations. So that, I think, that was like the big flurry of activity in the first year and a half of AI at NLU. And things have kind of settled down a little bit, although we have another big push coming for summer and fall that we'll talk about soon. At this point, we have kind of moved into more of a consultation model in a lot of ways. We continue to work with faculty and with students in individual consultations, class visits. We have visited a number of faculty program meetings to help facilitate conversations, address concerns, and help them plan for whatever is coming next. We also offer monthly academic honesty office hours for faculty where they can drop in if they have any concerns, and we'll just chat about them, brainstorm together, see if we can find some solutions. Those have had a pretty low turnout, to be honest, but I think they've still been really beneficial in that they are pretty widely promoted across campus with our names and the library's name there. And again, with that goal of having the library be a place that you can go, I think they've been a really successful effort in that regard. I also want to mention with these consultations that at some point we shifted a little bit from doing presentations where we come and talk at people to wanting to go places and find out what they have to say, what questions they have, especially with AI. We have faculty who are early adopters, they know a ton, they're raring to go, and then we have other faculty who are a little bit more hesitant. So it's hard to plan a presentation that's going to be one size fits all. But if we go into a meeting prepared to hear what they have to say, answer whatever questions come up, I think those have been really beneficial and really impactful conversations. We have continued, though, to do some workshops and presentations. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Amy's already talked a lot about that course development partnership. We continue to find ways we can work this guidance into those meetings, into those partnerships. We continue to develop our guides and learning materials, and we continue to advocate for faculty and student concerns. And I think this last one has been really key. As you've heard, there have been a lot of opportunities for us there, but there has also been some challenges that have come up with that, and that's what Amy's going to talk about next.
So we have been really excited about how involved we've been able to be in NLU's policy and programming related to AI, thanks to sort of this history and the partnerships that we already have in place. But as you can imagine, like there's definitely been tensions and challenges, as Sarah mentioned. And so there's a lot, but these are sort of the ones we decided we wanted to highlight here that might be relevant for everybody to think about. And so the first one is that we've touched on a few times here is like whose voice gets centered in these conversations. We have administrators, we have faculty, we have students. And student voice is something that we have really prioritized in all of our work, but really particularly related to policy, which tends to be this very top-down thing. And we want to incorporate student voice. And so a lot of those initial conversations that were happening, that AI work group that got convened, those really heavily featured administrative voices, and then to some extent faculty voices as well. And when we were talking about moving forward, like we really felt strongly like we're making assumptions here. We can't keep going with this without actually hearing from our students. And that's what led to those focus groups. And I think that what's really important, like we didn't just do those to do those, right? Like we did those and we took them very seriously, and they became very influential in our approach to programming and to the institutional guidance. Like as Sarah mentioned, we took them everywhere. Like everybody who wanted to hear them, we took them there, and people listened, and we really, used that as what really informed the policy and the guidance that we put out. As Sarah mentioned, and I'm sure you're all experiencing sort of in your workplaces and on your campuses, the level of understanding of, the level of interest in, the level of proficiency in AI tools just varies so wildly. Like it's just across the board right now. And just like what sort of tends to happen on a political spectrum is like the loudest voices tend to be at the extremes. And so NLU is an institution that has historically been very forward thinking in terms of technology and education. And sort of accordingly, then there were a lot of people here who were like, we got to be all in, right? This is some new thing that's coming out. Like we need to be jumping in with both feet wholeheartedly. And, there were some fairly like influential figures in the faculty development space who were really taking the perspective of, this is here, everyone's using it, everyone here should be using it. Like we should be focusing on how this is awesome, right? Like that's sort of like the perspective we should be taking. And at the same time, Sarah and I were having these experiences with faculty, a lot of the faculty we worked with for a long time, who frankly were very scared. Like they were very, very nervous, and they were very overwhelmed, and they knew they didn't understand what was going on. They certainly did not think this was a purely cool development, right? So our role, when I look back on it, I feel like really became one of sort of welcoming all the voices into this conversation. And really trying to meet faculty where they were instead of trying to push them someplace. And bringing these conversations sort of back to these like foundational concepts of academic integrity, like this is new, but it's not new in a lot of other ways, that really helped. And like faculty cannot take advantage of all of AI's opportunities, right? And there are many, like there are a ton that can be taken advantage of, but they can't do that if they're scared. It's like this idea of like their basic needs have to be met, like they have to feel safe in order to experiment. And I think sometimes it's sort of all these conversations sort of came off as like this battle between like over here we have the innovators and like over here we have the Luddites, right? But that like really, that wasn't what was happening. Faculty were just sort of prioritizing different things based on their fields, based on their experiences. And some faculty, rightfully so, were super excited to like learn all these new things and learn these cool tools. And they wanted to think about how they could teach these things to their students, which is great. But other faculty were just like really concerned about the ethical issues related to AI. And that's what they were really interested in learning about and teaching to their students. And as Sarah mentioned, like when we come into some of these spaces, like navigating all of those different perspectives and respecting all of those different perspectives in one room can really be a challenge. And then what sort of leads me to my next, like sort of speaking of like challenging conversations, one of the questions that has come up over and over and that keeps coming up over and over with faculty is, how do I identify it when a student has used AI to plagiarize? And then maybe even more importantly, how do I talk to a student that I think has plagiarized with AI? And I think for any of us who teach, these are like some of our least favorite moments, like long before AI, having conversations about plagiarism, they're just really hard to have. And they're even harder to have now that there is no definitive proof. In the past, if you had a student who like copied and pasted something from the internet, like you go find that passage word for word, like, got it, easy, it's done. But there isn't really something like that for AI. And if any of you have experimented with AI detectors, right, you know that they exist. But no matter what their fancy marketing says, like they're not perfect, they're not totally reliable, they're easy to fool. And so faculty have to rely on these other indicators. They have to rely on their knowledge of the student, which may or may not be complete, depending on what kind of experience they have with them. They have to rely on sort of their own judgment to draw these conclusions. And we have found that a lot of faculty with that uncertainty there, feel a lot more anxiety now. They already felt sort of anxious about having these conversations, and now they feel even more anxious. And this anxiety is sort of exacerbated by like our next point here, which is that program chairs and administrators don't always have consistent approaches to the on-ground handling of AI-related plagiarism. You know, that academic honesty policy that we talked about, that's institutional, right? That applies to everyone at the university. But the way that policy is actually implemented can vary. So faculty are, asking for guidance from chairs and from university staff who may or may not be fully fluent in AI, who may or may not know all of the issues with AI detectors, and who maybe sort of lack like their own confidence in handling these issues and are sort of defaulting to some position. So not all faculty feel confident sort of enacting this policy as written without feeling like they have full and complete understanding from their leadership. And so through all this work that we've been doing, Sarah and I have really put ourselves in the position of advising faculty here, which is great. And we love to do it, frankly, because there isn't one other consistent voice doing it all the time, right? But that's challenging when we don't always know what support faculty are going to get from their leadership. And this is a challenge that is ongoing and one that we are hoping to address with some future work that Sarah will talk about in a minute. But before I pass it off to her, I just want to sort of acknowledge one last sort of challenge here, which is that anyone working in higher ed sort of knows that like when you want to enact any kind of change, there's this certain amount of bureaucracy and red tape involved. Like for example, if we want to revise the academic honesty policy, that's going to take a year. By the time it gets through the full governance process, that's going to take a whole year. And in this case, like we really could not wait. Faculty needed guidance. Students needed guidance, like crying out for guidance sort of across the board. We needed new syllabus statements now. We needed new assignment instructions now. And so in this particular case, sort of due to that trust we had built and that history of work we had done, we were able to act reasonably quickly. So like that faculty guidance that came out, those AI workshops we did, that statement that got sent out to students, all that happened while we sort of waited for the official policy to follow suit. And so we're grateful for that. And that was a very important part of this process. So now I'll pass it to Sarah to talk about what we're looking forward to next.
So a lot of what I have to talk about on this slide, I was realizing as Amy spoke, is directly related to the challenges that we identified over the work of the last year. We do have a number of collaborations coming up. One of them, we actually just had a meeting an hour ago about this, was to work up a slate of summer workshops and other offerings from our learning design team, which is our instructional designers, specifically for subject matter experts designing courses this summer. How can I design courses that are AI proof? How can I use AI intentionally? Learning designers are working on helping people use AI as a tool in the development process. So we're kind of working out who's responsible for what in there, and doing some sort of partnership this summer, and then maybe something greater in the following year. Amy talked about that issue of, faculty not always feeling confident in enforcing their classroom policies in cases where they don't have proof. We had identified that as a concern again and again when we talked to faculty. So we recently approached the provost's office, hoping that we can develop some sort of partnership there, so that faculty can get top-down support from the administration. So we're working out, a statement that can come out from the provost's office, paired with training and support opportunities from the library to help them navigate, the enactment of the policy in practice and feel supported in doing so. A lot of that comes down to program chairs who have to be empowered to support their faculty and have to have the knowledge to do so. They have to be able to be okay with that nuance. They have to be able to speak to those issues of AI, which are really new and really complicated when their faculty bring them forward. So we're going to be targeting program chairs even more in the coming year. And then finally, more consistency in messaging and approach. One thing we've heard is that faculty and students get different guidance about things like the efficacy of AI detectors, depending on which campus entity they approach. And that is, a problem in a lot of ways. So we would like to work towards getting more consistent messaging from all of these relevant groups. We do want to keep the student voice centered in all of this, and a lot has changed since we did those focus groups in June of 2023. We are already a year in at this point, so we'd like to rerun those student focus groups sooner than later and see, what might have changed. We also have really focused heavily on academic integrity in the last year, which I think we agree is probably our major focus of concern, but there are other areas we think that we could lend some guidance. AI for academic research and critical evaluation of AI outputs is something that we're getting more questions and interest about. So we're starting to explore what kind of support we can provide there. And then, of course, we want to always be recognizing that this is ongoing work that is going to change as tools evolve. And we want to continue to be that voice for ethics and integrity. Again, as Amy said, in this world where a lot of people are just barreling forward with AI, whether it's in higher ed or outside of it, we think that there's a role for us here to be the voice for ethics and integrity around academic honesty, but also in related issues. All right, so I think we have some time for questions.
And yes, I've seen a couple questions in the chat. So yes, here's our official slide that says it's question time. If anyone has a question, please put it in the chat. And I see the first one was about hearing more about the focus groups and what questions were asked. I do have just the list of questions. Would you mind, Sarah, if I can just put them in the chat? I can just put the questions in if anyone wants to see them. I'm not sure how they're going to come out formatted in the actual chat once I do this, but you can all see this. And so the questions that we asked were sort of in three big areas, which was sort of what's your general perspective kind of on plagiarism and academic honesty generally? Then sort of what's your sort of personal knowledge and perspective of AI tools, on AI specifically? And then how do you want to get information about it? What do you think your instructors should know? What do you think the university should be communicating in this area? And so I'm going to try pasting these and see sort of what the formatting comes out like. And while I'm doing that, I don't know if you wanted to share anything else about the actual groups itself, Sarah.
Yeah, so we, very briefly, we tried to target all of our student populations online, in person, graduate, undergraduate, with varied levels of success there. And you asked, Debbie, did a consensus emerge? I think there were a couple themes that came out. A big one was about faculty. Students were so concerned about what their faculty knew and didn't know about AI. Some of them felt like their faculty had no clue. Some of them had no idea because their faculty hadn't said anything about it. Again, this was June of 2023, so it was early days for a lot of people. And I think that was one reason why a lot of our efforts have been so faculty focused, is because the students were so faculty focused. And then other themes were really around stuff we had heard for years about academic honesty, concern about Turnitin and surveillance, concern that if they plagiarized once, even accidentally, it would be, the end of the world, and consequence would start happening without the student being able to defend themselves. So students really just expressing a lot of anxiety and concern there, both, in the way we had always heard, but with a new level that AI brought to it.
And I couldn't paste those all at once, but I pasted them into the three sort of separate chunks. And then, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I see we have another question from Olivia about the focus groups. We recruited students, so our online and graduate students, we sent out emails to all students asking them to sign up for this. We had a large number of students sign up, but a smaller turnout for those groups that actually came to the online sessions. So that's something I think we'll think about if we run them again, is how can we better target online and graduate students. We had pretty good luck with undergraduates because we were able to partner with some faculty who actually let us push into the classrooms, classes that were meeting. We were able to just go to those classes, and we had a captive audience there. So that worked out a little better. And because of that, we had a higher number of undergraduate than graduate participants.
Yeah, but the pushing in was something that really was so much more successful and perhaps got people to attend who typically would not have self-selected into a focus group. So I think when we rerun them in the future, that's probably a strategy that we'll try again. possibly see if we can do something similar with some of our grad and online courses who might at least have like optional Zoom times.
And NLU does a fair amount of focus groups with students, and we had helped with focus groups that other departments were doing in the past. So we had some like lessons we could learn from observing how those had gone in previous years.
Okay, I see another question from Mandy. Do you have any recommended resources for helping faculty design more AI-proof assignments? So yes, this is something we've talked a lot about, and I'm trying to think if we have anything written down that we could share with you right now. We have guides related to designing for academic honesty, which is a very similar strategies. To like the same kind of things you might do to help students maintain academic integrity also work in sort of AI situations. So we can share that guide. I can grab that link.
Got that one.
Okay. And then this is something that we have been talking about with faculty and something we're hoping to do in this upcoming slate of workshops that we might have a clearer deliverable to share. But I think that's something that we're thinking a lot about, and that we do have also some stuff from faculty development on, but I'd also have to go grab that link as well. Okay, we're going to get all these links for you, right? We should have come prepared with this like list of links for all of you guys, right? Okay, Sarah, we've got the academic honesty guide, perfect for faculty. And that guide has like an AI specific tab, and then it has like some specific guidelines for creating assignments.
And a lot of, like Amy said, a lot of the guidance around AI proofing is the same as like plagiarism proofing assignments in the past, things like scaffolding across multiple assignments, asking students for reflections, that sort of thing. Like Amy said, we would like to, provide more for faculty in the future, but at this time, a lot of the existing guidance really still stands.
And I'm trying to look for where the other sort of guidance from the CTLE is on using AI in assignments and designing assignments. So I'll keep looking for that, but I want to make sure to get to some of these other questions too.
Looking through the questions here, I see one from Olivia. I love this question, Olivia. When doing class visits, how do you handle differences in opinion and teaching preferences from faculty on how they want AI used in the classrooms? Do you try to stick to the academic honesty statement? Yes, so this is really key. And there was one point where we had kind of a flurry of requests for faculty saying like, come to my class and talk about AI. And we were like, in what way? And I think that really involves a lot of questions for the faculty before that session happens. What is your classroom AI policy? Do you want students using it? Do you not want students using it? In your field, what is important, what's not? We've had several requests from education faculty who, have students using AI for things like developing lesson plans, for example. So we had some great conversations with those faculty about what's appropriate with that and what's not. And we went into those sessions honestly with very little prepared, aside from, being ready to answer questions from the student, being ready to refer the student to their faculty. We had some great conversations about, what might be appropriate for you in the classroom right now might be different from the school that you end up working in someday. But again, being prepared for that nuance, being prepared for that lack of certainty, and there really can't be a one-size-fits-all situation there. So the faculty have to be really ready to partner with you on that. There is no like, just come and talk to my class about AI. That's not really a thing that we can do without their input.
And guys, I realized that I didn't put the questions to everybody. It was just to us. So I'm going to re-put those questions in for everybody. Okay. Yeah. And so I'll do that now. And then I think then the next question is from Sarah. Given the increasing demands on academic librarians to teach AI and academic integrity, do you believe this shift is an appropriate use of librarian specialized skills, or does it dilute the focus on teaching research skills? So that's a great question, and something that I think is really, especially because to be totally honest, like this AI and academic honesty stuff has taken up just like a huge amount of Sarah and our bandwidth like this year. I mean, it's just a huge amount. So I think it's a worthwhile question. I do think that it is very much part of our work. And it is, AI is now like part of research skills, for example. Like we're working on a whole guide about how you use it for academic research and sort of the ethical issues that are involved in that, right? Like to me, these things can't be separated. Like I don't necessarily, like I think that thinking about using AI and thinking about sort of like the ethical issues and biases related to AI, that is like an advanced information literacy skill that is going to be very important. Analyzing the outputs of AI, right? All those things. So I think it's just sort of a shift in where we're going. I don't think it's a separate thing that's diluting. They are just completely intertwined now.
Yeah, I think the balance of handling this new element along with our other work is certainly going to be a challenge. But I think increasingly, as we've seen our faculty and students get more comfortable with the idea of what AI is, we are getting questions that are a lot more sort of traditionally information literacy focused. We talked to some faculty a week or two ago who were asking us questions about AI output as it relates to primary versus secondary source research for their upper level students. If their students are going to ChatGPT and asking it questions, well, ChatGPT is not giving them, the primary sources that they need at a particular level of research. And so how can those faculty who maybe don't have a great understanding of how AI works, how can they guide their students to more appropriate sources? How can they guide them in synthesizing information when a big chunk of their information is coming from ChatGPT? That's really clearly to me an information literacy issue. It's just kind of packaged in a new way.
Okay, and I think that I put the focus group questions in sort of 3 separate chats, and then I put the link to the academic honesty guide for faculty, the teaching one, in there as well. And then if there are questions that you all have, like our contact information is probably somewhere, but if there's something you all want that like we didn't get to give you here today and we have 1 more minute, I'm going to put my email in, and Sarah, do you want to put your email in? So if there's something that like you wished you had a resource, like please email us and we're happy to share. Okay, anything to fit into this final minute. And the copy and pasting is sort of strange, Stacy. I had a really hard time copying and pasting into this chat. I had to do it in chunks, so I don't know what to tell you there.
Yeah, if you're having trouble with that, send us an email. We'll get you what you need.
Yeah.
Great. At this point, we wish to say thank you to Amy and Sarah for this presentation. And based on all the questions that have been posed, I know it's been well appreciated by all those who attended. We have another session immediately coming up at this 2 o'clock, so please you all check your lobby page and do enjoy the second presentation. Thank you once again, Amy and Sarah. Pleasant evening to all.
For having us. Bye.
Bye.